Heavy metal
My
rock.
global mind.
We are speaking with Richie Faulkner of Judas Priest fame to talk about the release of Elegant Weapons, a new LP called Horns for a Halo, due out May 26th. Richie, welcome and thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us.
Robert, it's good to see you again, man. It's been a while.
Yeah, I think we last spoke when you guys were working on, just came out of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So that was fun.
Yeah, that was a great night, man. You can imagine there was some legends there that night. It was an unforgettable evening for sure.
True. You know, I've been excited about the album and since it's been released, and I've noticed that when it was originally announced, there was different members playing on it. Rex Brown and Scott Travis were originally supposed to be on it. Now you have a different drummer and a bassist. Can you share a little bit of insights behind the swap?
Well, Rex and Scott are still on there. They were able to do the record. I asked them. It kind of came together during the pandemic. Really, I focused, many of these ideas during the pandemic. And at the time, obviously, there were lockdowns. No one was doing anything. At the time, I didn't quite know what I had, or did I have an album or an EP? Did I have a band? And at the time, I had a record that I needed to record. So I asked Scott and Rex if they could record this record for me, and obviously Ronnie, I'm obviously, what's the word? Very grateful and fortunate that they were all able to do it. And then from there, obviously, when the lockdowns were lifted, everyone's back out on tour. Rex is doing Pantera again,
right.
which is great. So if I wanted to take it on the road, I needed to look for people that could do it. So that's what I did, really. So it was the circumstances changed, obviously. So I had to change with it. So that's what happened. So I've got Christopher Williams and Davey Rimmer along with Ronnie. And Christopher was actually involved right at the beginning of the whole thing. Christopher actually came in and recorded all the demos, the early stages of the recordings before. I couldn't get Scott. Scott was, again, lockdowns and stuff like that. I couldn't get Scott to do it. So I got Christopher in. And he recorded the album before we got Scott in to redo his drums. So Christopher was intimately connected with the project. Christopher was a no-brainer. Davey was a no-brainer. I've known Davey for over 20 years on bass. And obviously Ronnie Romero. So that's what happened.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I love Ronnie. I heard him play with Michael Schenker, and he was on the last Michael Schenker album. He was with Rainbow. How did you come across him? He's a tremendous singer.
Well, I think the first time I met Ronnie I think it was on the Firepower tour out with Priest out in Bilbao in the Basque Country. I met him then, and obviously I've been aware of Ronnie, for a few years. And I was talking to Damon Johnson of Thin Lizzy and now Lynyrd Skynyrd. I needed a singer, and I was talking with Damon about who I could potentially get on vocals. And Damon actually mentioned Richie Blackmore and Rainbow and stuff like that. And it was a no-brainer. Ronnie's got that classic voice, but he's also a modern day singer. He's a singer in 2023, but he's got that classic vocal that we all know and love, and it will fit the music perfectly, I thought. So I gave Ronnie a call, and not only was he perfect, I thought voice-wise, but he had the same thoughts as me as well. You know, we're both in legacy bands. They might not be around forever. You know, that's the reality of it. And you know, hopefully, we can take that DNA into the future with something like Elegant Weapons.
No, that's fantastic. I get it. Yeah, he's a classic rock, very versatile singer. He could do the Michael Schenker stuff, old and new, and he could do the Rainbow stuff. So he was great, great choice. I've only heard three songs. I heard "Do or Die," "Blind Leading the Blind," and "Horns for a Halo." What's the rest of the album sound like?
Although I think that gives a good taster of what the rest of the record is. There's a ballad on there that's a bit different to the songs you've heard already.
Mhm.
But it's kind of you know, heavy, bluesy, metal in places, hard rock. You know, that sort of riffy. What you've heard has kind of given you a good slice of what the record's about, really. So that's why we wanted to release those three um, first, just to give a taste of what's coming.
Did you incorporate any different techniques or effects that you normally would not use on a Judas Priest album for this album?
Not really. No, it's you know, I kind of do what I do really. It's kind of it's a guitar. In this case, it's a flying V for a Marshall. That's basically what it is. If anything, there were less effects. It was again, it was one amplifier and one guitar. Um, not, I mean, I didn't set out to do that. It just worked out that way. There was one guitar that was ticking all the boxes sonically, and an amplifier that really kind of had that. It just had a character that was unique to me, and it sounded great. So there's a few post effects, you know, like echo and stuff like that. But as far as recording wise, it was a really simple process on the guitar.
Now you said it was recorded during the pandemic or maybe written during the pandemic. Did you send tapes to files to everybody and then everybody recorded their parts and sent it back to you for you to mix and produce?
Pretty much, yeah. Apart from the drums, as I said, like initially we couldn't get Scott over, so we did the drums later on. And by then, I was able to get Scott over, and I did it with him in the room. But initially, yeah, I sent the stuff to Rex and Ronnie. They recorded it in their respective cities and sent it back over. And then me and Andy kind of put it together either because, and obviously Andy was in the UK producing, and we'd communicate either in real time if we were putting stuff together or going over mixes and stuff like that. So that's how we do it, really.
That's pretty good. Was it important for you to show fans that you're not one dimensional and can only write for Judas Priest, but yet you could go beyond Priest writing style and deliver hard rock, super melodic?
No, I don't think that was. It wasn't really to show anyone. It was just that I'm always writing, I'm always creating, and I had some time to put something else down. It was important for me to, I think, to do something that sounded different to Priest. Otherwise, there'd be no point in doing it. I mean, Priest have given me the opportunity to write with them, and do that kind of thing with them. So if it sounded like a Priest record, there'd be no point in recording it.
I agree.
It was important that it sounded different, but it wasn't really to prove any point or to show anything. It was just to do something that might be a bit different, might sound a bit different. Just was interesting, really, just to get a record down. And as I said before, just initially, I wanted to see if I had anything. Have I got any songs? Have I got an EP or an album, or have I got enough to put a band together? So, and as I kind of went through it, it was evident that I did, and I sort of ran with it, really. But it's all the same DNA. It's the Hendrix in there. It's Priest. It's Metallica. It's UFO and Schenker, and that's the same sort of DNA that's on my stuff on the Priest albums, really. So it's no different in that regard.
So when you're writing, you're coming up with riffs and ideas. How do you know which ones to give to Priest? How do you know which ones to keep for this project?
Well, that's a good question. One of the good things about the timing of this was obviously the lockdowns. We weren't on the road. One of the other things was all the ideas were written for the Priest record. So they weren't recorded yet, but all the demos were written. So all the creative ideas needed were done. So I could draw a line under that. So anything
Yeah.
else I'm coming up with, I could dedicate to this album, you know. So that was how I did that, really. So I had to draw a line. Okay, that's done. That's taken care of. So now I can
Start
dedicate
fresh.
all these ideas to this.
Were any ideas that maybe didn't make it to a Priest album that you presented to the band that are on this album?
Um, I don't think so. Not that I remember, anyway. I mean, some of these ideas have been around, you know, for years, you know, and I don't remember if there was. It might have been just like a riff on a file or something like that. There was no real contender for any album, no. Um, so no, I'd say no, not that I remember anyway.
Okay. You know, with Elegant Weapons, it's your band, you're in charge of the music, everything, how it all comes together. How does that maybe differ from Judas Priest, where it's a group of people getting together to collaborate and come up with songs? And how did you like that compared to maybe working with Priest?
Well, it was the circumstance, really. I mean, I'd love to be. I mean, it's always been my goal, really, to be in a group of people that like Priest. I mean, it is me, Rob, and Glenn that write in Priest, and it was Glenn, KK, and Rob before. They've always had that dynamic, and I like that. I like to bounce ideas off other people. It was just a situation, really, during the pandemic. As I said, you know, a lot of us were isolated. Um, but you know, moving on into the future, you know, we've already started the framework for album number 2. Me, Christopher, and Davey
Oh,
got
wow.
together and put the drums down, and we'd done it together in a room, you know, to get the drums down. So it was more of a collaborative effort. The vocals haven't gone down yet at all, so we've got room for experimentation with vocals and contributions from Ronnie. So you know, a band to me is a band, and although I put this together and kind of spearheading it, I'm all for a band. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
like that dynamic as much as anyone wants to be involved, really.
No, I get it. I get it. And you know, working with Rob Halford, he's such a, you know, a unique and talented vocalist. When you're writing songs, do you just hear his voice in your head for the riff? And it was a difficult to separate that, say, you know what, it's not Rob, and I got to write for myself.
Not really. To me, it's the riff first usually. The riff comes first, and then the vocals fit around it, and then it will be a case of where do we put the vocal depending on what suits Rob's voice and range and what suits the song. That's what usually happens. So not really. For me, it's always the riff. The riff is it's
Okay.
the almighty riff, you know, or the melody first. And I always think, you know, you could go to every country around the world and play a riff and it's understood, or a melody and everyone understands it. Where if you go to non-English speaking countries, for example, they might not understand the words, but the melody and the riff you can speak. It's a universal language. So to me, that's what's important to me first, you know.
No, and I get it. That makes total sense. You alluded to this before, but maybe when Priest ends someday, you're going to take this out on the road. But are you planning to do any shows now with Elegant Weapons, maybe before the Priest album comes out or what have you?
Yeah, again, timing is on my side. I mean, we've got a complete year off with Priest. We're not going out until well, at least next year. I mean, you
Oh,
know,
wow.
I don't want to give anything away. Like, but I mean, we're taking some time off, so I've got time to put this record out, and we've got some dates coming up in Europe in June and July. And it was a priority really for me to have a band that does live dates, does tours, does shows, doesn't just release a record and that's it. I want to, you know, release new, you know, I want to grow as a band, both live and in the
Great.
studio. And that's what it's about for me, really. You know, whether the future allows that, it's tough to say, but that's always the goal, to put a creative statement, take it on the road, become part of, like, you know, the live thing is what I live for, really. You know, in the studio, putting albums together kind of facilitates that. You can go out on the road and play live. That's what it is, and you can connect with people that way, and then go and do another record and another, you know, live experience from there, and then go and do another record and grow and evolve as a band with the characters in it. That's my goal, really.
Yeah, and I think fans like that. I like to follow a band. I like to see the legacy. I like to see them progress. I just don't like them to be like a one and done, and then you never hear from them again. It's like, oh, what happened to that album? So I think that's smart, and I really like that. Are you going to be coming to the US? Is that in your plans?
Well, yeah, we're looking at opportunities. At the moment, as I said, we're in June, July. We're in Europe. We're doing some festivals and some dates with Pantera,
Mhm.
and then beyond that, we're looking at options in the States. I'd love to come to the States. The States have been great to me in Priest. I'd love to get over to Japan. Asia, places like that, and South America. So yeah, watch this space. We've got the agent looking for opportunities, so we'll see what happens.
No, that's great. Priest is one of my favorite bands, as I've told you, and I've met multiple times, seen the band since I was a kid. But I think you took their songwriting up a notch. I think you took their style and their songwriting up a notch for these two albums.
Oh, thank you very much.
Um,
I mean,
what do you think you brought to the band in terms of songwriting? I know guitar playing, I know what you brought, but what about in terms of songwriting?
I don't know, man. I mean, I learned from those guys growing up. Like listening like you did when I was young.
Yeah,
I looked to those guys, for guitar playing and songwriting and how to move on stage and all that sort of stuff. They were the teachers, on how to do that stuff. They invented the rule book. So I don't know. I just I was doing what they taught me to do. You know what I mean? That I can't
awesome. Yeah,
really.
I get it.
That's basically what I did. I just did what felt right, what I thought should be there. That's basically
Yeah.
what I did, and it all came from them.
So you had like 30, 40 years of training before you even got to play with them in your mind of what it should be.
It, exactly, yeah. Priest, Metallica, UFO, Thin
Right.
Lizzy, Jimi Hendrix. All those teachers that you listen to, and you try and figure out what is it that they did there that made me feel like that, and
Right.
how can I recreate that kind of thing? Not only note wise, but just like the sonic landscapes that they create, and it creates an energy, a feeling that you try and recreate in your songwriting.
Oh, that's great. As I mentioned, I love these two albums. And on any given day, I could like one more than the other. And then the next day, I'll like the other more, depending upon my mood and what I'm listening to. Um, is there a certain level of expectation that the next one has to be better? Do you sit there and scrutinize it and say, this is better than that? It's not going to be as good as this. Let's not use this song. I mean, is there a lot of thought process with the band that goes into the next album, song wise?
Well, I think better is obviously subjective,
Mhm.
but I think you're right. I think there is a dedication to it's always been that. I mean, I've only done two records now, three. There's always been a dedication to doing better,
Right.
whether it's live production, set list, or in the studio, songs, playing, performance, sound, song creation, all of that stuff. There is a dedication because the fans have been there for 50 years, some of them.
Yeah.
And without the fans, there's no Priest. Everyone's aware of that. So how can we kind of give back and make sure that what we're doing is given 1,000% as well? So there is that in your mind. How do we make this one better? How do we make it sound better? For sure, it's obviously a part of the process. But obviously, better is subjective. Like how do you make a better song than Comfortably Numb, for example?
Yeah.
But Pink Floyd go in the studio and they do it, and they do something that satisfies their definition of the word better. So we have to try and do the same, like something that connected with so many people, like Firepower. We have to go in there, and that's the challenge. You have to rise to the challenge and do something that does quote unquote better than that.
Yeah. Now, do you have a title for the new Priest album? I mean, you don't have to tell me if you do or don't, but if you have one, the name of it, but you could tell me maybe if you got one in mind.
We've got a few things kicking around. There was a few things kicking around right from the early stages, and they're still there. So that's interesting. Some things come and go, and some things stay right from the early process. So they're usually the ones that make it to the finish line. But we haven't decided on anything concrete yet. But yeah, there's a few kicking around that bring. It's always good to have a title that brings imagery, because the
Yes.
imagery can transfer obviously to the album artwork, but also to the stage set as well. So it's good to have a name that can do that job too.
Yeah, and the shirts and the marketing and all that. I think it's really important to have a great image and that ties in nicely with the band and the logo. So that's
Exactly. Yeah. Yep.
Are you more comfortable as a songwriter? I think you're a tremendous songwriter, and the Elegant Weapons really shows it. Do you think you're more comfortable as a songwriter now than when you first joined Judas Priest?
That's a good question. I would say no. There's always something in the back of your mind that tells you this isn't very good. I think it's your amygdala, it's your fight or flight saying, if you're playing something like Electric Eye, it's good. It's been validated by 30, 40 years of this is good. Whereas if you're writing a new song, even if it's with Priest or if it's backed up by 2 albums with Priest, there's always something in your mind that says, what are you thinking? Why did you think this was a good idea? And that's just a human trait, I think, because as I said, you haven't got that 30, 40 year history of a song being objectively great. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I think even, I might be wrong, but even Rob and Glenn get, nervous when you put a new idea, on the writing table. It's always intimidating, especially for me, but for anyone really. You're putting your soul out there to be critiqued and judged and stuff, and it never gets any easier, but you just got to kind of rise above that and put it forward anyway.
Yeah, I think you did a tremendous job on Do or Die and Blind Leading the Blind. Killer songs, great songs.
Thank you very much.
So I see you growing, and I really see you, getting better and flourishing from your guitar playing and your songwriting. So
thank you, man. I think I'm just doing a better job of concealing who I'm ripping off. I think that's what it is.
How about this? Are you less nervous with working with Rob and Glenn now than you were when you first started? You were probably thrown in the mix going, holy shit.
Yeah, of course, less nervous. As I said, though, there's always that. There's more at stake now. You've got more skin in the game, and especially as you were talking about before, after something like Firepower, it connected with so many people. Now you've got to bring something in that kind of stands up to that. So there's more on the line, So some things are easier, some things are harder. You've got to kind of keep that going, So it's tough, but obviously on a relationship level, we're a lot closer, a lot more familiar with each other. So that part of it's easier.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, listen, I want to thank you for your time today. It was really inspiring to talk to you. One of my favorite guitar players, and I always
thank you, Robert. Appreciate that, man. Thank you.
And I hope you come to New York and New Jersey soon. I got my fingers crossed for that. So, we'll catch up. I'll take some pictures, do the review of the show, maybe say hello. So I look forward.
Hopefully, man. Hopefully see you very soon.
Very good. Thank you so much, Richie. Have a great day.
You too, Robert. Bye now.
Heavy metal rock.
Global mind.